Hi guys, Tiffany Faaee. I'm with Rugby United New York here in Times Square, and you're watching Rugby Wrap Up.
Coming up next, Major League Rugby history maker and barrier breaker, Tiffany Faaee. Rugby Wrap Up brought to you in part by Irish Rugby Tours, The Balanced Palate, Nutrition for Peak Performance, AFIA Sports Training Group, and the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap Up. Matt McCarthy at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in New York City, and we have the history-making, barrier-breaking Major League Rugby coach, Tiffany Faaee. Tiffany, welcome.
Hi Matt, thank you so much for having me.
Tiffany, happy holidays.
Happy holidays. We're waiting for that snow, but fingers crossed we get a white Christmas.
I noticed that you're actually dressed like a civilian because it's Tuesday, the week before Christmas, while we're taping.
That's right. I wanted to feel like a human and not just a coach.
Like a clown
When I
sitting
came.
here like a clown? Right.
Exactly.
Okay, are you calling me a clown? I think you are calling me a clown. You can. You have the permission to do that. So Tiffany, for the folks at home that are in a coma or living in a cave or under a rock, you are the first ever women's coach of a professional men's rugby league in the United States of America.
It worked out that way, yeah. Thanks,
Right?
Matt. Yeah, huge deal, huge honor. I think it's just a testament of the work that women have been doing in rugby, especially in the US, for a long time. I just happened to be, in the right place at the right time, I think. Obviously coming off a really good player profile, and obviously with the World Cup, opportunities opened up. And yeah, I credit, everyone that's been working in the background, all the women that have already been breaking barriers, just not, and then I just happen to represent them at another level. So very excited.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but your background is basically, I think you were born in California, spent parts of your childhood in Samoa and New Zealand, mostly Auckland?
Yes, correct.
All right, and you started playing rugby at the age of 16, and you were in the back line.
I was in the back line, yeah. I was centre, 13, then went to 12, and then a few years later, the coach thought I, had too much Christmas festivities, so put me at 8-man. And then obviously coming over here, everyone's a little bit smaller, so, Pete Steinberg was like, look, we want you on the pitch, but, we'll give you a go at prop. So worked my way around the pitch a little bit.
Yeah, so, you work, saying that you worked your way around the pitch a little bit is a little bit of an understatement. You became captain of the Eagles team that played in the World Cup in Ireland in 2017 as a prop, and then came home and won a national championship for the New York Rugby Club as a back. Correct?
Yeah, Matt, I appreciate you've done your homework.
I watched it. I saw
right,
all of it.
right. And you're New Yorker.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm a New York fellow New York Rugby
right,
Club
that's
member.
right.
A lesser known one, but I am one.
You are. We appreciate all your support. That's actually how it went down. I mean, playing at the club level versus international, some of your skills are definitely transferable within the different positions. And, rugby's gotten to that stage now where the number on your jersey only really matters for set pieces. Otherwise, the expectations, around the pitch is the same. They expect you to still be explosive, know how to pass, get your vision going, be fit. So, now that you put it like that, it does sound a little bit.
Well, I just remember looking at the national championship matches, and I think you had to play like two in a back-to-back on days, right?
Yes.
So this is 15s. This isn't 7s. This is full-on 15s, 40-minute halves, national championship tournament, and if you win, you got to play like the next day or a day after that.
Yeah, so actually it was a Friday and a Sunday,
right.
So they give us the Saturday off.
Yeah, that old Friday night, Sunday afternoon match, which doesn't really give you much time to. All you do is get stiff anyway.
Yeah, that's right. And, a lot of time off work. So it's big sacrifices, from the women. But, the WPL, that was their 10th year anniversary. So they've been doing it for a while, hoping that progression is coming slowly. But we do want to get away from, needing to take time off work to play at that level. Slowly but surely.
That was insane. That was literally insane. And should never have been asked of you people. But you did it. You guys won.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, your head coach, or not really ironically, your head coach at the time was James English, who is now the director of rugby or general manager of Rugby United New York.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So he's not surprised to see you in a coaching capacity, because actually rugby is in your blood. And for anybody out there that has any doubt about her resume being as a coach, playing in Auckland since she's 16, surrounded by rugby, it's in her blood. She lived in Samoa. She lived in New Zealand. She's played in a World Cup, and she can play in the back line or in the front row and knows enough to talk rugby with basically anybody.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Well, it's the truth.
Yeah, I do think that that's probably why these doors are opening up. I am fortunate to hang around people like yourselves. Obviously, James English, he was sort of like a coach mentor for me leading up to the World Cup, and then obviously him being the coach and being captain in New York, we had a really good relationship, and I was always really transparent with him, and any questions I had, we bounced off each other. And I think having someone like him to advocate for women's rugby as well, I think it's men like him that are coming through that are also looking beyond that, outside of the norm. So hopefully after this, it won't be unusual to see a title with women coaching men, if that makes sense.
Well, and it is appropriate, because Rugby United New York, I guess, is uniting everybody, right? I mean, it's living up to its name.
That's right. And New York being a trendsetter, in all aspects, I think it's absolutely appropriate and real swaggy New York style.
All right, so I've got to ask you a couple of questions. Number one, you had to feel like it was a bit odd. I was on that bus ride up to the Boston area for the match against the New England Free Jacks with you, and I was just trying to put myself in your shoes, because basically only woman on the bus, right? Mm-hmm. Did you see it as just, was it weird for you?
I mean, I wasn't uncomfortable, but it was different, obviously being the first woman in this capacity, I imagine it's going to be a first of a lot of experiences like this. But no, it wasn't. I said this to an interview last week, that the boys are actually really, really supportive. And I think, it's that environment. At the team, they all call me coach. It's not Miss and I think that sort of gives me that reassurance, because it is. And, I do sit there and I've always got a perspective going, wow, this is the first time, got to hold my own, I got to represent. But no, none of it was uncomfortable for me. But again, it helps when you have the likes of James, and obviously you're on the bus too, and the boys they just treated me like any other coach, and makes it very easy.
Yeah, and an early morning bus ride doesn't necessarily make for a loud bus, right? So it was a quiet bus.
It was.
And it's a professional atmosphere, so they're not going crazy anyway.
Yeah.
And it was even kind of tame on the way home. Not that I'm talking about what happened on the bus ride, because I don't do that. But it was, it was a professional environment. And I was just wondering what that initial feeling for you was, just walking up the steps of the bus and looking and then sitting down, because the coaches sit in the front.
Yeah,
and you get to see the whole expanse of the bus and everybody's sitting there.
Right.
And it's like, okay, here we are.
It's funny, because later on I went to send a message to the boys, to give them a time when we need them on, and just then was the first time, going into the changing shed, I was like, oh, I better make sure everyone's decent. But you know what? In my mind, I was like, this is what the men have been going through, because usually it's all women.
Right.
And the men are having to knock on the door and give notice. So I was like, all right, but that was the only time I was like, oh, this is different.
And there's a good point. There is a bit of hypocrisy out there that says, well, how can a woman coach a men's team? Well, we can also just as very easily say, how can a
it's been happening for years.
Women's team.
Yeah, where it was only one man on the bus and the rest are women. So
exactly.
I'm just putting myself in their shoes and go, well, if they could handle it.
Right. Do you speak to anybody about it? Do you seek advice? Do you talk to a Steinberg, who I hate to say is actually very good in the booth? Pete, it kills me to say that. It really pains me to say that. But Do you
I've
reach
talked
out
to a
or
few
you
people.
know?
Yeah. I mean, I talk to James a lot still. I talk to a lot of like Lucy. She was my co-coach for New York. Obviously, Steve Lewis as well, and Lara after the game in the weekend on the ride home. I'm always sort of, because it is a big deal, right?
Right.
And
when you say James, you're talking about James English, who was a male coach of a national winning New York Rugby Club team.
Exactly.
Right. And Steve Lewis coaches women all the time.
Yeah, and at the World Cup, there was all the women's teams had male coaches.
Right.
So I can't say I was the first person that was the only sex of my, compared to everyone else. It's
Right.
just been happening the other way around.
Frequent guest on Rugby Wrap Up, George Hook, was actually the Ireland's women's coach at one point. And he actually coached with the men's Eagles the first World Cup in 1987.
Oh, wow.
This guy's been around the block. That's why I have him on the show.
Oh, okay.
But, so there is all this precedent set the other way.
Yeah.
You're now just reversing the pendulum, or swinging the pendulum the other way.
Right.
And it's pretty cool to watch.
It is.
You know?
Yeah, I know a lot of people probably assume that there's no other woman to look up to. That's not ever, but the technicality is it's pro rugby, but there's actually been women coaching men for years, So, and to me, it doesn't matter what level. Like, I have so many that I could reach out to and go, hey, how did you deal with this situation? And obviously having coached at Monroe College as well, that's helped me, prepare. So, yeah, different dynamic. I've always struggled with the dynamic of growing up in New Zealand culture rugby as well versus American. So now it's like another...
Tip, hold that thought. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Tiffany Faaee after this.
Been blind since I was 4. And I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste. And my beer's Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
And we are back. Tiffany, what would you say the skinny is on the comparison? What's the elevator pitch or the elevator 2 sentences that's the big difference between the culture of rugby on the level that you were playing in New Zealand compared to here?
Oh, man. I go back and forth about this all the time. And I do think a lot of the rugby culture in New Zealand starts at home. And because it's like, a lot of them are Polynesian, Māori, and obviously Pākehās as well, Europeans, a lot of the homes are sort of have the same values.
Yeah.
So when you get on the pitch, it's not, you kind of almost speak the same language, but you're, transferring onto skills. Whereas here, so many different, like the melting pot. So you're having there's different dynamics, different cultures, and it's just going to take us a little bit longer to find that humming. I mean, it's happening now, right?
That sweet spot, that common ground.
Yeah. So I mean, there's no issues with like the haka. It's Māori, but everyone embraces
Right.
it. You see Richie McCaw going hard at it. You
Right.
might Nonu, they're not Māori, but they embrace it.
Right.
So I think to me
Kieran
that's
Reid, Dan Carter, the whole 9
exactly.
yards.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the biggest difference for me. But again, we're finding our rhythm here. Obviously, it shows with our placements, our rankings going up. So it's getting there.
It's exciting to see the rankings going up, and it was exciting to watch you in the Rugby World Cup for the women's side in 2017. How do you feel about how things are changing? Is it too much of a glacial pace, the pay scale or the potential per diem scale for the national women's teams? What's it like for you watching that progress after having been through it in Dublin?
Yeah.
And working basically for peanuts, right?
Yeah. Hey, look, it's just two sides, right? Because you're like, wow, we never got that stuff. But at the same time, it's that's where we're heading, And I know that the generation before us saw us and was like, wow, you're so lucky. You're playing a lot more games.
Right.
You're getting a lot more kit. So it's tough in a way where you're like, damn, the struggles. But at least your struggles today is to help the future. And that's what we all play this game for. Any sport is always to make way for the people that are coming after us. So it'll be a lot more disappointing if I was to look back 10 years and they're still getting the same stuff I did. You know,
Right.
you expect them to be getting more. You expect everything to be growing and going in a positive direction. So, yeah, it's great, and we have a laugh about it. Going, that was, you know, we didn't get paid, but I mean, I'm not sure. Like, obviously, that's something that like Emily Barlow and Rob Kane are working towards. But yeah, we're all for it. We want to see the programs grow and make that what we struggle like worth it. You know,
Right.
So
Getting back to RUNY, Rugby United New York. Is there a nickname yet that's official for the team? Like you have the New England Free Jacks, you have the Seattle Seawolves.
Yeah.
I know that Roosters is being tossed around there.
Yeah, that's the only one I've heard of too, is the Roosters.
It's ridiculous enough that it actually is kind of cool because in New York City you got the RUNY Roosters. That could work.
I mean, yeah, there's a ring to it, obviously. I haven't actually put much thought in it, but that's what I've heard so far. And they mentioned it at training the other night, and I was like, when did that become a thing? But it's up to the boys, up to the players.
All right, so we're not going to leave the marketing to you, but what is your role right now? Have you got a defined role yet? Is it kind of still emerging? Is it materialized now that you say, okay, they say, okay, Tiff, you and so-and-so take care of that, or you do this and that? What's the story?
Yeah, so, Mike and I have been talking about this a lot, and I like Mike's approach because he was very open about, he's like, he wants to build the relationship between him and I, figure out what my strengths are, because at the same time, I want to develop, right? And he also wants to see, find that balance of using my strengths, but also helping me in another area so I could grow as a coach. We've been talking a lot about defense. So lately, I've been coming to practices, and he sends out the plans. He's like, Tiff, just check on the quality control, especially around the breakdown.
Yeah.
That's something that a pet peeve of mine, like consistency. So I think he appreciates my attention to detail, and he's just been giving me all that little stuff to do in between practices. But I think him and I are on the same page in terms of making me focus on defense and giving me the skills and his vision. And then obviously I need to go away and, come up with a plan to how to implement that to complement his vision. But nothing concrete yet.
Tiff, unfortunately, we're getting the sign that we are out of time. But before you go, I want you to tell me what the number 246 means.
246.
That's right, 246.
8, 10.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Oh, boy. You know what?
My eagle? No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's
we're
your
going
eagle
now.
number,
Oh, thank
yeah.
you. Okay. I wasn't sure.
Oh,
Oh, Matt,
you know
you're so
what?
good.
You know what? These people,
I mean, I knew it
they
was
just think that
246.
the
I just-
eagle cap and everything else is just another day at the office.
No, I'm very
right?
impressed that you knew that.
Oh,
Again, I have faith.
All right. Okay. On that note, we are out of time, but I want to wish you the best of luck. I'm a big fan, as you know. And you know what? To all those people out there that say she doesn't have the credentials, you're wrong. Because she does have credentials. She has a meteoric rise in the coaching world, sure. But she's played top-level rugby. She's played in the back line. She's played in the front row. She's been a captain of a national team in a World Cup. And she's had a good run. And she's also been a national championship captain.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
I'm on board. And I think everybody else around here is pretty much on board. And if they're not, they will be.
Yeah. It's all right. We got time. Appreciate the support always.
All right.
Thanks, Matt.
And on that note, on behalf of Tiffany Faaee, Matt McCarthy, for Rugby Wrap Up in New York City, happy holidays. We'll see you next time.